Hello, this is Mike Van Meter, and welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast. And I want to thank you for joining me today. You can reach us at our Facebook site, which is also called Recovery is Possible, or our website, which is VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. And this episode is sponsored by FHE Health, a substance abuse and mental health treatment center specializing in treatment for first responders' needs, including PTSD, anxiety, and substance use. Take the first steps to a better life today by visiting FHEHealth.com. That's FHEHealth.com. And folks, I want to welcome back to this program Heidi Marshall. Now, if you remember back in episode 20, and that's a little over a year ago, Heidi came on the show and talked about her story and her struggles with employment and how that affected her at the time. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I encourage you to go back. It's episode 20. Great interview. I re-listened to it today, and it's just funny how a year later I can glean so much out of that conversation that I didn't pick up the first time. So go back and check out that episode. But what I wanted to do, because in that episode we talked about how that was a part one and that we were going to have a part two, and I wanted to wait a little bit because at the time Heidi had just retired from the Ohio Highway Patrol, and she was engaged at the time to get married, and then since that time she has gotten married, and a little bit of time since retirement, and so a lot of things have changed. There's been surgeries, there's just been a lot in life as life happens to do. And we wanted to check back in with Heidi and just get her perspective now that life has so dramatically changed since then, and get an update on her perspective and her life and balance and all of the things that we talked about regarding, just living a happy and balanced life. And so with that, Heidi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I guess I got to correct you right up front because a lot of changes over the last year. And I think the biggest one is my last name is different. So I'm now Heidi Ramsey and not Heidi Marshall.
Yes. See? I am so sorry about that.
Trust me.
Well, a lot has changed.
Oh, yeah. So it's even hard for me to remember at times. So,
but you were Heidi Marshall
really
at the time.
And
now you're another person. You're Heidi Ramsey.
That's
now,
right.
But along that line, but you really are a different person. I really feel like today, okay, let me back up a little bit. I just re-listened to the episode today. And when I was talking to you in the original interview, I said to you, you were not the same person in that interview that I had met when I met you at the National Academy. Now, I'm going to continue with that and say that you are not the same person sitting here today that I interviewed over a year ago.
Well, life happens. And would you believe that it's been 5 years ago since we met at the National Academy? 5 years.
It's unbelievable.
This month that I first was able to go to the National Academy, obviously be in your class. And, thinking back, you think about how much has changed in that 5 years. But I really think that 5 years ago was really the start of me realizing, how much I really needed to focus back on me because I hadn't for so long. So, which I know we talked about in the last podcast, but yeah, since then, even since last time, I was engaged at the time. We got married. Always stressful, trying to plan a wedding, but then throw COVID and everything else on top of it. So that made it a little bit more stressful. But luckily we were able to have a great celebration, March of this year. And even before then, I had mentioned last time that I never even had a cat, so I couldn't even be the crazy cat lady. But now I've got 2 Doxy Poo puppies that are running around here and being quiet even as we speak. Between having a husband and 2 puppies and work and hobbies, things are extremely busy, but a lot more to focus on other than myself, finally.
Right.
So...
And that's a big change.
Right. Oh yeah. That's
a big change because when in the last interview that we did, you talked about how your life was so centered on your career, and you were working on a law degree, and you were working on getting promoted, and then working on getting re-promoted, and you talked about how that was just the focus of your existence at the time.
Well, not only that, I mean, but I let everybody else around me basically dictate what I was going to do, right? So I was so focused on how everybody else was acting, or, you know, why I wasn't getting this position, what did I need to do, which really was just all those things that were out of my control. I had nothing to do with any of that. The only thing that I could control was how I reacted to it, or what I did, to, make myself better. But through all that, what I was neglecting was myself. Right. Which, takes a toll, because you lose your identity, or you think you don't have an identity. And, so really for me, that 5 years ago was realizing that I needed to do more to take care of myself and not worry about everything else or everybody else. And, having the opportunity in 2018 to retire, when a lot of people didn't think that I should. But to me, I needed to take that next step, right? I needed to take that chance. And things are 150 times better now than I could have ever imagined that they would have been. So yeah, it's been good.
So now you're teaching the Leading at Risk Employees course down at the FBI Academy, and obviously a lot of these concepts, you're now teaching this to the students down there. What is it about your life today that you're taking from your life and applying it to the students? What are the big concepts?
Well, and not only through that class, but obviously the last year and a half, we've been doing things remotely, right? So I've had the opportunity, not only through that class, but then to talk about those pillars of wellness, and the family, the social, the emotional, the spiritual, everything that goes into life, and really focus on what we need to do, particularly in this profession, to be well. Right. So we focus on that balance, which of course is easier said than done, especially depending on what's going on in the world and what type of event we have to handle and what our jobs are at the time, whatever, or what is going on in our family life, and, illnesses and kids going to college. And there's a lot of things tearing at us all the time, much less, because of this profession. So one of the things that was, weird for me, actually just happened a couple months ago, and put it in perspective for me, just kind of how things have changed as far as my life goes. And I share this with other officers, whether in person or virtually. So one of those aspects that we focus on is, our social lives, and who are those people that you surround yourself with, and are those relationships positive, and do you have those folks that you can interact with who, listen to you without judgment, and you can call up and vent to, and especially when things don't seem to be going so well, and you trust those people to bring you back kind of to reality, if you will. And one part of that is, how much you share with your family, how much you share with your family about work, and regardless of what your job is, how much you share with your family about how the events, the historical events, the cultural events, the different things that are going on, how they affect you, because we live in this world now where there's seemingly this constant barrage of negativity, particularly against law enforcement. And while it might not be affecting us in our little part of the world right now, we can't get away from it. Back when you and I came on this job, 26, 27 years ago, We didn't have social media. We didn't have the 24/7 news cycle. We barely had cell phones. We certainly didn't have, the Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. So I could go through the course of my shift and go home and tell my mom and my sister basically the Disney version of what happened. Obviously, I couldn't do that with my dad because he was a trooper, so he knew exactly what happened during the course of my shifts. But I could give the Disney version. But on top of that, then I didn't have anybody other than my mom and my sister to tell those things to, right? Because I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, things like that. Well, now I'm retired, and I'm not in the operational part of the job anymore. But my husband is. And a couple months ago, he had an officer killed in the line of duty. Now, I had just gotten done with a webinar teaching, and I get 2 text messages, one from a friend of mine in Florida and one from his sister in Indiana, asking me if I've heard from Mike because they heard there's an incident. Well, of course I hadn't. But now I'm trying to look and find out what's going on. And nothing on TV. I go to the internet and I see, officer involved shooting. There's an officer down. Well, I haven't heard from him, but I know from the pictures that are online that where this incident occurred is his area. Right. See, so I almost know too much about the job, right? So he can't sugarcoat the stuff for me. But, I knew that was his area. And I also know enough about him to know that at the beginning of every day, he gets up out of his office and he goes and walks around to all the different posts. So there's a good possibility that he could have been there when this incident occurred. So for an hour and a half, I don't know. Because he's obviously not in his office. I know that he's taking care of stuff, and I'm not going to be able to get a hold of him. So I don't know what's going on. But then a strange number comes up on my cell phone locally, and I just have a number I don't recognize. And, that stomach dropped for a second, but I answered it, and it was him. He borrowed somebody else's cell phone just to tell me that he was okay and he was going to be late for work. But at that moment, I sent my mom a message and I said, you know what? I don't know how you did this for 30 years, 31 years. Well, then even more with me on the job. Just that constant not knowing what was going on and not knowing how those things affected me or affected my dad. But it put it in perspective. We often, we think so much about the job and we get so focused on the task at hand because that's what we do in our type A personalities that we forget that our loved ones are at home worrying about us, hoping that we get home at the end of every night. But they could care less about how many tickets you wrote, how many promotions you got, how many cases you were the agent on, or how many Intel products you wrote or whatever. All they want is for you to come home happy and healthy and able to make it to the end of your career, able to collect a pension for as long as you can. Then that's all that matters, right? That should be our focus. So if anything, I try to relay that to the people in my class, in our classes, right? Because that's what's most important. And we get so focused on promotion and moving up in our jobs and like that's going to be a measure of who we are and a measure of our success that we lose sight of those people who are going to be there when this job no longer is. So I guess that, but my own kind of incident put that into a little bit more perspective here just a few months ago. So, a lot of that and really sharing, for those who listened to the last podcast, part 1, I guess I didn't realize that I signed on for 2 parts, so I should have negotiated my contract a little bit better.
We talked about part 3.
That's even scarier.
Signed under your contract. Wait, are we paying you for this?
Oh shoot, no. Well, I did get a drink, so I guess it's.
I gave you some water.
I got some water.
Yeah, and a cookie. Oh, a cookie.
Yeah,
Maybe a cookie
yeah.
too.
And Lily's watching the puppy somewhere, so that's a good thing. Sharing my story, and people who come up, hard-boiled officers who have been officers and, type A personalities for how many years. And after I share my story, then they're willing to share their own. Because one of the statements I made, and we just listened to it, was, you know what? Each and every one of us has something that we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. I think my story's pretty messed up, but your story's even more messed up than my story. And there's a lot of other people who have even more messed up stories than the both of us. So, just giving them that outlet, that safe space, which was what you gave me when I came through 5 years ago. So that, it helped me. So hopefully it'll help someone else.
Yeah, that's really what recovery is all about, is Bill Wilson's great discovery and gift to mankind is that by helping others, we actually help ourselves more than we help other people. Mm-hmm. And you are absolutely right. And I'm front and center to that. One of the changes since in my life, since we did your podcast, is I'm now interning up at a treatment center in Maryland, and I'm with the general public. And wow, I mean, it's really an eye opener with not only the addiction issues, because prior to this, I had dealt primarily with addiction issues where I was working, but now that I'm working with the general public, I'm dealing with much more serious and in-depth addiction issues, along with, in many cases, very significant mental health issues on top of the addiction issues, and that's really helped me in my own recovery, because you're right. You just whenever you think, man, my life is going a particular direction I'm not happy with, then you see what other people are going through, and it gives you empathy, it gives you sympathy, it gives you, you're doing what you can to help these people, but the benefit is that you really help yourself more than others. I got to tell you, just watching you today, you're just such a different human being than I first met. No, I mean you are, and there's been so much growth that I've noticed, and I would like to think that there's been some with me as well, but just a radical change. I mean, look at all the things that have happened in your life, all the good things that have happened in your life. The woman that I met when I first met you, you were just so focused on the job, just so focused on promotion, just very focused on that. But you're just so much more balanced in looking after your husband, looking after your dogs, looking after, looking at law enforcement from the outside as opposed to the inside, and having those sorts of concerns. And then the realization that profession, we're talking law enforcement, anybody listening to this podcast, law enforcement is not unique in that. The military is the same way.
It's anywhere. It's
I'm working with patients. I'm working with bankers, airline pilots, business people, restaurant owners, and those people are just as committed to their own professions, and they identify with whatever it is that they do. They identify with that, and then when we don't have it, then what? And what I really like is the fact that you have found that there is so much more to life. Because, folks, I don't care how committed you are to your profession and how committed you think they are to you. The fact is, they're really not. And that's not meant to be a slight on my previous organization or yours. It's just the way that it is. It's just life. That's the way that it is. The problem's not the organization, really. The problem is us and our expectations of that organization. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, I think, in every organization, regardless of your position, we think that we are indispensable, right? Like, we're important, and, everything is going to fall apart if we're not there. And, hopefully we get people to the point where they can just go right in and take our place when we're not there. I mean, that should be the job, especially as you move up in or whatever organization you're with. But, I would make a joke that's not really so much a joke, that, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and, people will mourn, but there's somebody who wants my job. I mean, and
they were probably driving that bus, by the way.
Well, it might have been driving the bus and aimed it at me, but I mean, there's going to be somebody wanting the job, and heard somebody say that the job posting will be up before your funeral or before your obituary is up, right? So, it's that kind of puts things in perspective. Like, I mean, they're going to find somebody to fill the pieces to take the place and things like that. They'll move on, and it'll be like, Heidi who? and I gotta be okay with that, because we make the choices to retire or leave or go pursue other things, and you just can't look back and can't have any regrets and just keep moving forward. And,
right.
That's all any of us can do. So
let me ask you, you don't have an addiction issue, right?
Not a substance addiction issue, but we've talked about my exercise issues, when we talk about
the reason I say this, because
the
now I know when I taught leading at risk employees and even this podcast, let's be honest, because of my background, we tend to teach from our perspective. And, when you were in the class, when I taught it, it was heavy on the alcohol side. And then when you came in, and others, there were other people who taught the course. In fact, I just interviewed Art Nieves, who had also taught leading at risk employees, and he had his own perspective on it. And that's because that's how we teach. Now, so it's interesting that you bring that up, because if you're listening to this podcast, you may be focused on the substance abuse side of addiction, but there are other addictions that are out there. You have chemical addictions and you have process addictions, and what Heidi's talking about would be considered a process addiction. But so let me just kind of set the direction of this question here. So the 12 steps can apply to anyone. Even if you don't have an addiction issue, the 12 steps are really just a good way to live life. It's really just a good guide to life. So what I was going to ask you is, how much, if any, of those principles have you applied to your life in the last few years? And then, maybe address to, it sounds like, because you and I did not talk about this before doing the podcast, obviously there's some concerns in the back of your mind. So maybe to kind of tie all that together.
So, obviously, my first interaction with the 12 steps was just being in your class and, having the opportunity even to go to a 12-step meeting.
Right. Because you'd never been to one before.
I had never been to one. And I still encourage, especially since here recently, a lot of 12-step meetings are on Zoom. So I still encourage students to go to meetings, find an open meeting, just to see what it's all about, so that they know, so that they can, if they recognize somebody might be having an issue, they can go with them if they need to. But, I think, first of all, step one, admitting you're powerless over whatever, right? And
not
for
just
me,
alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, right. I mean, powerless over whatever, and your life has become unmanageable. Seriously, I was like the epitome of that because of work. I mean, I couldn't control anything that was happening at work, about me, except for me. But I was so focused on it. I was so wrapped around the axle about everything. That's unmanageability, right? I mean,
right.
It was dominating everything that I did. But then realizing that, right, and admitting it, and kind of being like, you know what? Okay. It's out of my hands, right? There is a plan. I don't know what it is. I might not like it at the time, but eventually it's all going to come about. And so I think, when you look at that, steps 1, 2, and 3 are pretty big, and were big for me. And shoot, even step 4 and 5, when we're, what, you want me to share my story with other people? It's bad enough I had to share it with you. Really, you want me to tell other people about this? What?
Well, meeting with me probably adds more to your step 4, more stuff to write about. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But then, I mean, you had already, you already mentioned it. step 12. I mean, sharing it with other people,
Carrying the message, yeah.
carrying it forward, helping other people, sharing your experiences with other people, because, you don't know who you might touch with something that you say or something that you share or something that you've experienced. And I never think that it's going to have an impact on anybody. But then, an email will come out of the blue, or somebody will send me a text message, or, come up to me in class, or, say, hey, I've been there too. And, a lot of people, there are a lot of people, again, law enforcement or otherwise, but a lot of people that I come in contact with who are struggling and don't feel as if either they have anyone to turn to or to look to. And, if anything, maybe it can encourage somebody, hey, she came out okay, or he came out okay. Maybe I can too. So I want some of what they've got. Right. That's big in the addiction realm, right? Give me what you've got, because whatever I'm doing right now isn't working.
And you have to demonstrate that to others. Yeah.
Right. And I figured that out. I mean, because doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result certainly wasn't working for me. So sometimes you got to change up that result whatever you're doing, as uncomfortable and as scary as it might be. But thankfully I got the opportunity. I mean, I had in my mind that, if, I wasn't planning to retire. I mean, I had 2 more years to go so that I could get my full pension. But I had made up my mind that, I'm not going to focus so much on, this job or getting promoted here. If something interesting comes along, I'll entertain it. And it did. And, taking that chance, taking that step, retiring from a job that I had 2 years to go, that I've been doing basically my whole life, selling my house, moving to, Northern Virginia, and, working in a completely different place. But I think I had to do that, more to grow and be the person I am now, as opposed to being stuck as the person I was 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the 12 steps helped me immensely, in that whole process, and just trusting in whatever that plan was, and knowing that, things were happening for a reason, in due time, not necessarily in the time maybe that I wanted it to happen. But it has happened. So, and it's better.
Now, you had mentioned, so you brought up something that it sounds like there's been some other soul searching since the last time that we talked. I mentioned addictions, and you started to mention an addiction. Address that a little bit.
Oh, so you were talking about process addiction. And so, for me, 5 years ago, I mean, just before I came to the academy, I always knew that I wanted to try to do a triathlon. You watch the Ironman championships in Hawaii, on Kona, around every Thanksgiving they show it. And, it was always, I'd always ended up crying because you'd see the, the father pushing the guy, his kid in the wheelchair, and, pulling him in the boat on the swim, and pulling him on the bike and all this other stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I want to try that. But I didn't really know how to swim. So this was 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sign up for a half Ironman, because, why start at a smaller distance, like a sprint distance or an Olympic distance? And, we'll just go for, 1.2 mile swim when I don't know how to swim, 56-mile bike, and a 13.1 mile run.
Makes sense to me.
What could go wrong?
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I signed up for the race. The race was in September. I signed up in January. I figure I got 9 months to get myself where I could swim comfortably, and did that. Did the half. I did a couple other smaller races before then. But then it's like, okay, what's next? And the next thing is a full Ironman. So signed up for my first full. Did that in September of 2016. And you would normally think that, you would complete your first full Ironman before signing up for your second. But no, that's how other people do things. Right?
Normal people.
So that's how normal people do things. Yeah. So I actually signed up for my second Ironman before I even did my first. So, and then at my second Ironman, I think if I remember right, you probably remember this, remember I tripped over the finish line because you and your family were there.
That was Lake Placid.
Lake Placid. Tripped over the finish line, and in my mentality, I can't end, this Ironman season with a trip over the finish line, so I need to sign up for my next one, right? So you get the gist.
Yeah.
And then, when you're done with Ironman, there's this thing out there called Ultraman.
Yeah.
So as if a full Ironman wasn't long enough, let's do it for 3 days. 10K swim and a 90-mile bike on the first day, 172-mile bike on the second day, and then a 52.4-mile run on the third day.
No, in case the listeners are wondering, why it's 52.4 miles, because 52.5 would be crazy.
Exactly.
That's why it's 52.4, because you don't want to be crazy.
We got to cut it off at a double marathon, because anything more would be nuts. But so yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So did that. So it's always, okay, what's more? But again, I was still by myself. So all I had to do was train and work and sleep, maybe eat every once in a while. But so that's all I was doing. Then life changes. And the second time I was doing the Ultraman, I realized I was training about a year prior. It was about a year before I was out on a run, and I get half mile from home, and I take a step and I felt a little tweak in my back. Well, again, normal people would probably have stopped running and turned around and walked to the half mile back home. But I kept running, got a 5-mile run in. Cause my back bothered me, but it wasn't bad enough to stop. Then my left foot started to go numb. Well, I don't need to feel my foot when I run. I know it's there. So it's hitting the ground. I don't need to feel it really. It tingled every once in a while. Then I went to a chiropractor. The chiropractor said, hey, we're going to send you, you've got your spine's a little bit out of whack, and we're going to send you to a pain management doctor, not a surgeon. She said, and I'll tell him that, telling you to stop running is like not an option, or, to stop doing these things. So go get an MRI, go to this pain management doctor. And the first thing he said when he walked in the door was, you should not be running or lifting heavy things. Oh. He said, you've got, and even before he explained anything, I started crying. He didn't even introduce himself. So I didn't even know this guy's name. He didn't introduce himself. That's the first thing he says when he walks in. And then when I start crying, because I'm like, well, what the heck am I going to do with my life? He says, well, it's not like I told you you have cancer. Well, but in my mind,
right,
it was like he told me that. Right? He told me I can't do a couple of the things that are, that's what I'm working towards. Now, keep in mind that this was on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And I had a half Ironman that weekend, just a training race. So, he told me that I needed surgery, and I didn't believe him because, I'm not a medical doctor, but of course I know more than a medical doctor, at least in my mind. So I figured I'd do that half Ironman, and if I did okay, then that doctor was nuts. I didn't need surgery, and I did fine. And I did fine in the other Ironman that I did, and was doing fine in the other races. And then the second Ultraman came about a year and a half later, and I realized that I wasn't doing so fine, and got halfway through the run on the third day, and basically my body said, nope, you're not going to be able to run anymore. If you do, it's not going to be pleasant. But I stayed out there, just kept going until they told me I had to quit after 12 hours. Then went to a different doctor that I liked, that I trusted. And he said, looked at the MRI and he goes, yeah, you need surgery. And he said, well, I'm surprised the doctor a year and a half ago didn't tell you needed surgery. I'm like, oh no, he did. But I didn't believe him. Because in my mind, I had all these events planned.
Right.
I couldn't miss out on all these events. I couldn't defer to next year or whatever. I couldn't wait. I had classes to teach. I couldn't take the time to go fix myself, or to go get fixed. So I figured it would all just work itself out. But then COVID hit. Everything was canceled. So I got the opportunity for a year, to have my surgery and focus on me, because now I didn't have the fear of missing out on any races because everything was getting canceled. Yeah. Nobody was racing. So that's, for me, where, I go overboard. Now, I'm getting back into training, but not nearly at the level that I was, just because of the other things that now I have to focus on. So my husband works weird shifts and I want to spend time with him in the evenings or on the weekends. And, I don't want to put my puppies in a cage when I go for a run or, do a training ride or, something like that. So I'll do a lot of stuff inside on my trainer and on the treadmill or whatever. Kind of plan my training around that. And I don't want to go overboard to the point where I was before, where I'm hurting myself and not paying attention to myself because I feel like I just got to train and train and train. Now, thankfully, my husband knows when to pay attention to me and will actually force me. He will make doctor's appointments for me because as I got started back training, my right foot was feeling weird. It had swelled up. I didn't go to an urgent care or anything like that, but then it was bothering me for a few weeks. And he says, I'm making you an appointment. And he called and made me an appointment and made me go. And my foot was feeling better. It was fine. I was walking on it. Never had any issue, anything like that. And I go and I tell the doctor, I said, yeah, my right foot was bothering me there for a little bit. And, but it's feeling better now. So I don't really think there's anything for you to look at. He goes, oh no, you've got a broken foot. I said, oh, okay. He said, and when did this happen? I said, well, as best as I can tell, about a month and a half ago. So he goes, oh yeah, well, it's already starting to heal itself, but here, we're going to put you in a boot and you're going to do so. So thankfully I've got now somebody who can actually hold me accountable and make me do those things. So I'm focusing on staying healthy and doing the things that I need to. Because
we are not always the best judge of what's good for us.
Right.
Hence sponsorship, in recovery. And by the way, I want to throw in, because I was around you throughout that whole process. And there's actually, so the listeners, I want to put this in perspective. Heidi was talking about the Ironman triathlons and the Ultraman triathlons. But you're forgetting like the dozen or so marathons and half marathons per year you were doing in addition to that.
Right, yeah, to train. Yeah,
because
to train.
If I remember correctly, because my wife and I would go out and crew for you, there was a marathon, I think, that you were having some issues in, and then the JFK 50-mile ultramarathon.
JFK 50, yeah.
Which was prior to that Ultraman where you had issues. Those were, the signs were there.
Right. Oh, yeah.
All right, because I remember the JFK, because the Ultraman was in February. The JFK was in November leading into that, and you were having some real problems then. And I remember having a discussion with you about, hey, you really need to get this looked at. And you had a very different mindset back then. It was like, nope, I'll just gut through it. But Yeah, looking back on it, I think if that were to happen today, you would have a very different approach.
Oh yeah,
towards it.
yeah, absolutely.
If you remember all that, there were a lot of things. But tying that back to, do you think now that was indicative of a process addiction?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. And I think now I understand it. Because that's, but like I said, I've never had any type of substance issue or anything like that, right? Knock on wood, thankfully. But I think that, and also, combined with, that type A personality that is manifested over 27 years of being, in law enforcement and always, striving to be the best and, just kind of that focus. And, that was my way of focusing on something else other than the job because I didn't have anything, else to focus on. Right. Well,
I think that with law enforcement and military people that I work with and airline pilots, there are other professions that are just as type A, the medical profession and some others. That's why I've always felt like that step one seems easily. I'm powerless over alcohol or fill in the blank, whatever it is. I'm powerless over whatever in my life has become unmanageable. That seems like an easy step to work, but in reality, it's a difficult one. And it's difficult to work with people that are like us because the idea that we are powerless over something is a foreign concept to us. Professionally, it's a good thing that we are conditioned to drive through very difficult things. But when it comes to addiction issues, we are powerless over, because like you just described, and honestly, as I listen to you talk about exercise and training and things, that was also this kind of mindset I had towards alcohol. And that was, hey, I can't not live with the doctor. You were like, hey, I can't not do this. This is, you don't understand. This is what I do. And that's really the same thing in a chemical addiction too, is you don't understand. I can't live without this. Right. And so you see the parallels between the two.
Well, in fact, when I told you that whole story the night of that doctor's appointment, you straight up told me I was acting like an addict.
I did.
You did. Yeah. So because of how I was acting and carrying on, because, my way to get rid of a bad doctor's appointment is to do a spin class and then go for a run, because then obviously the doctor's wrong.
Yeah. And we have to be brought to our knees. And I distinctly remember when we were at Ultraman, Florida, that weekend, and before we came on the podcast here, Heidi and I were talking about that week, or the 3 days, rather, the race was going on. You were struggling early on. I could tell you were in pain. Just, I could tell. And it was really starting to manifest itself on the bike ride. So it's a 2 days worth of biking. And then when you got into the run, you were just, it was degenerative. It just took its toll. And just so the listeners know, you got to literally about mile 48, I want to say, of 52.4, I think is the total distance. And you got about mile 48. And it was painful. It was, you were in a lot of pain, but it was painful for us to watch, because you were just really, really working hard and going through it. It was admirable. I really admired it. But then there was a point, and I don't know at what point it was, where you're just like, that's it. And I remember you and I had a conversation. You said, I'm going to go back to the doctor. In fact, at the ceremony after the event, you actually told the whole crowd, those people over there pointing at us told me to go see a doctor. Now I'm going, as soon as I get back to Washington, I'm going to go to a doctor. And you did. But that was kind of like your equivalent of being the surrender, the surrender and being brought to your knees, you know? With these issues, these addiction issues, and if you're listening, it's important to understand that deal with these issues or they will deal with you. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
In the earlier
regardless
we
of
can
what
intervene,
it is,
the better.
Yeah. Regardless of what the issue is. But like you said, I mean, we have that mindset. We should be able to, we should be able to take care of ourselves. We're in control. We fix everything else, right? That's our job. People call us to go fix things. But we can't fix ourselves, right? If we break an arm, we go to the doctor. We break a back, you go to a surgeon. Yeah. All right. Well, sometimes some of us do, some normal people do. But when our minds are broke, we think we can fix it ourselves. I mean, why do we have, we have that thinking when we shouldn't, right? We should be able to allow other people to help us. So yeah, absolutely.
I think and I know that in the treatment center where I'm working right now, that's what I see. The people just have not surrendered. You just have not surrendered to what is obvious. In addiction, I can't stress this enough. I've talked about it on this podcast before. It is progressive. It gets worse over a period of time, never better. And there are no exceptions to that. None. And this was demonstrated. And what I liked about this case was, your case, is it demonstrates that it's not just drugs and alcohol. And by the way, if you get your substance abuse, whether it's drugs or alcohol, into remission, you have to be very, very careful that you don't then revert into a process addiction. Because I will tell you, in my own early recovery, I would say that I suffered from that as well, because I had the same tendencies that you have, maybe not to that level, because I had, being married, having kids, and there was just things about my life that prevented me from putting him in the amount of time that you did. I would have if I'd have had the freedom to do so, but I just didn't. But definitely those tendencies come out, and it demonstrated I definitely have that addictive tendency as well. And conversely, people that have, if you're starting out with a process addiction, you have to understand that you can put that in remission, and then be careful going the other way with the substance abuse. And that's something to be very, very cognizant of. Folks, what's important to understand is that addiction is addiction is addiction. And if you are genetically preloaded towards this, you have that genetic preloading, and you can become addicted to anything. I can become addicted to nicotine, which I have been in the past, caffeine, which I still am. I will tell you this right now, sitting here with a cup of coffee, but that's something that we struggle with. Then you have to be very careful with gambling. That's very, very common in recovery for people to stop drinking, but then turn around and have a gambling problem. Pornography, food addictions, too much, too little. Gaming, video gaming is another one, and all sorts of things, relationships, codependency, on and on and on. There's all kinds of things that we need to be aware of. So with that, Heidi, let you take us out. Any last closing thoughts on a lot of developments since? It's amazing what a year does.
I know, right? Yeah. No, a lot of changes. I don't know now where we're going to go for part 3, but I'm sure that we'll be able to figure something out. But no, I mean, it's all about, taking that first step and admitting that powerlessness. We don't like to admit things like that. We don't like to admit when we're not in control or when we can't fix things, but and then, just allowing somebody else to help us, and whatever's going to happen, just let it happen. And, if you think for 1 minute that things can't get better, or they're not going to get better, or they won't get better, just wait another 5 minutes and it probably will.
That's true.
I guarantee that it will. It might not happen when we want it to, but it will happen. So.
Well, what's going to be interesting, having followed sort of your Ironman, Ultraman marathon career, you just seem so much more happy as a human being now. And last year, 2020, there was no racing, or very little racing, let's put it that way. What's going to be interesting now is to watch you in the races and see if you can just enjoy the races now. Because I'll just tell you, as an observer, and I've told you this before, the races that you did, that I watched you do, didn't seem fun to me. It seemed to me like this was your job, this was your mission, and you definitely were out. And if you didn't perform the way that you had in your mind, or frankly, in your how you thought other people thought you should have performed, it was devastating. And it's going to be interesting to see now if you can kind of switch into doing races just for the sake of the enjoyment of doing it.
Well, and
no matter what it means.
And I think that's another benefit of my husband, who likes to do these things as well. And he goes, I just want to do these to have fun. He goes, I don't care.
And for fitness.
I don't care if I finish last or, whatever. Yeah. He goes, I'm just there. In fact, he says he wants to retire and be my Ironman Sherpa full time, but I don't think I can pay him enough to do that. But yeah, I think that's the next goal, is just to enjoy it and enjoy the people around and just enjoy the fact that we can be out racing in person again.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yep.
And tell Mike that if I have signed up for the same race that he's doing, he can have comfort in knowing that he will not be last. If I'm there, he will at least not be last. Because I will take that position.
Well, because we all know your role in a race is to make everybody else look good.
Frankly, that's been sort of my purpose in life. Right. Actually, is exactly. if I'm involved in whatever, then you'll look good. Right. But that will be it'll be interesting to see because do you agree? I mean, you were very mission oriented before.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Well, it's great.
So that's the focus.
I'm just so happy that you've come so far in this, and it's been fantastic. And thank you. This wasn't too painful, was it?
Oh no, gosh, no. But now part 3, that'll be interesting.
Part 3, we'll be looking forward to that. And appreciate. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And folks, once again, this episode has been sponsored by FHE Health. According to SAMHSA, first responders are 30% more likely to develop behavioral health conditions like PTSD. FHE Health specializes in getting first responders better and cleared for duty. Find out more at fhehealth.com. By the way, if I didn't even ask you, if you wanted to put out any contact information, or if anybody wants to reach out to you to get more information about you or what you do, what you teach, all that sort of stuff, anything that you want to put out?
So, I mean, I'm always willing to get any comments, or if anybody needs anything. My email, I'll just do my personal email, which has not changed. So don't be confused by the different name, but it's H.A. Marshall, Marshall, 222 at yahoo.com. So yeah, anything, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And we'll be posting that information as well. So as always, I'd like to say I don't represent any group, although I do know that we've talked about groups. We've talked about AA. We talked about the 12 steps. We don't represent these groups, folks. We're just throwing that out. That is what I practice. But, definitely find your own path, whatever works for you. But so we don't represent these groups. And I don't represent anyone other than myself, and the same is true of Heidi. Our only purpose in giving this information is to share with you what we've done, because it's helped us, and maybe it will help you too. So if we've said anything that does not apply to you or you don't agree with, then just discard it. But try to take any information that you can use for yourself, and you can help others as well, because that's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we help to impart the knowledge that we've gained to others as well. So with that, please visit our Facebook page, which is Recovery is Possible, and our website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. Let me know how I'm doing, and let me know if there's any topic that you're interested in hearing about. And I know you want to hear about part 3 from Heidi. We will definitely get that. We'll have to wait like another year, I guess, because we'd love to hear from you. So take care, and we will see you next time.